After spending the entire week defending Vladimir Putin, it was Donald Trump's press secretary Karoline Leavitt's responsibility to defend all of the indefensible actions and statements from our, dictator, president at this point, the guy who has announced himself as king. And she also tried to work in a little bit of Doge defense there, but as you would expect, the press conference with that much lying took a pretty bad turn pretty quickly and led to Leavitt abandoning some questions and kind of abandoning her posts a couple times. She was very panicked. It was an absolute disaster, and we are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's get into this first clip. It was not too great.
For either one of you. So we reported, several other outlets have reported that about 3,500 people are due to be lose their jobs at the IRS by the end of the week. If the goal of these spending cuts across the federal government has been to reduce the debt, why impose some of the deepest cuts we've seen so far at the agency responsible for raising revenue for the federal government?
Well, I think our objective is to make sure that the employees that we pay are being productive and effective. And there are many, more than 100,000 people working to collect taxes, and not all of them are fully occupied. And the Treasury Secretary is studying the matter and feels like 3,500 is a small number, and probably can get bigger, especially as we improve the IT at the IRS. And so I think that it's absolutely something that is on the table for good reasons. And the point is that don't just talk about the IRS, talk about all of government. That there are so many places. I live in D.C., you maybe live in D.C., where nobody's going to the buildings.
So maybe MAGA could just give us the actual reason why they want to go after the IRS, and clearly Karoline Leavitt is too afraid and too panicked to do so. We know why. It's because every dollar put into the IRS is a dollar spent on going after rich tax cheats, yes, the millionaires and billionaires who get away with murder on their taxes, and the giant corporations like Tesla who pay zero. That is what they're focused on doing. It's not about going after me and you. It's going after people with millions and billions of dollars. I believe the stat is that every dollar that is spent on the IRS returns about $22 to taxpayers. And if Donald Trump is so cut up with slashing the government budget so he can reduce the deficit, wouldn't having more revenue from taxes coming into the government also help accomplish that goal? No? Oh, you'd just rather get rid of Social Security and Medicaid. Oh, well, that's a different approach. I'd say it's a much worse one. And that's why Donald Trump is coming up with so many distractions, because his plans are pretty terrible. And that's why Karoline Leavitt's really only contribution to this press conference was this ridiculous statement right here.
One for Karoline. Does President Trump have a bet with Trudeau about this USA-Canada hockey game tonight? And when there is a big hockey game on, is the president watching for the goals or for the fights?
Probably both. I think he's watching for the United States to win tonight. I know he talked to the USA hockey team this morning. He talked to the players after their morning practice around 10 o'clock. And I also spoke to some folks from that team after. They were jubilant over President Trump's comments to the team. I believe they're going to put out a video of that call. So he looks forward to watching the game tonight, and we look forward to the United States beating our soon-to-be 51st state, Canada.
When things go bad in the Trump administration, we always have Canada to lean on, I guess calling them the 51st state. Peter Doocy with a bit of a layup there. Not shocking that now that there's not a Democratic president in the White House, there are no more gotcha questions from Peter Doocy. What a piece of Peter Doocy bag. He can join the Doge bags too. But this is what they're going to do. They're going to distract a little bit, and they're going to try to run away from the real questions, which is actually exactly what Karoline Leavitt did. First, when Mike Waltz, Donald Trump's national security advisor, was asked about all of his defense of Putin, Karoline Leavitt really just had to run away from the question and try to shut up Caitlin Collins. You'll just have to take a look right here.
So you're not worried about it. And
No,
Mr.
no.
Waltz, To follow up on Peter's question, you wrote in an op-ed in the fall of 2023 that, quote, Putin is to blame, certainly like Al-Qaeda was to blame for 9/11. Do you still feel that way now, or do you share the president's assessment as he says Ukraine is to blame for the start of this war?
Well, it shouldn't surprise you that I share the president's assessment on all kinds of issues. What I wrote as a member of Congress was as a former member of Congress. Look, what I share the president's assessment on is that the war has to end. And what comes with that? What comes with that should be, at some point, elections. What comes with that should be peace. What comes with that is prosperity that we've just offered in this natural resources and economic partnership arrangement. An end to the killing and European security and security for the world. The president's not only determined to do that in Europe, he's determined to do it in the Middle East. And just a few months ago, we had an administration that had tried for 15 months. Week after week, sitting with you here and couldn't get us to a ceasefire, couldn't get our hostages out. Now we're at that point. We're back to maximum pressure on Iran, and we have just begun, and we will drive towards a ceasefire and all of those other steps. I'm not going to pre-negotiate or get ahead of the sequencing of all of that. It's a very delicate situation. But this is a president of peace, and who here would argue against peace?
Okay, so you do share that assessment. And can I follow up? In 2017, then President Trump.
Go ahead.
Can I just follow up
Thank
really
you.
You
quickly?
just had two questions, Caitlin.
Meg, can I
Jordan,
just-
go ahead.
Mr.
I have an
Hassett.
important follow-up.
Jordan,
from my
go ahead.
colleagues.
So,
Go ahead.
Mr. Hassett, you were speaking about.
So, as you can see, Caitlin Collins was trying to get real answers on why the president of the United States is praising a dictator in Russia, in Vladimir Putin, why he has decided to completely abandon our allies, how that makes sense strategically at all, why Donald Trump is appearing so weak on the world stage. And Karoline Leavitt just tried to cut her off, tried to run away. She didn't spend a lot of this press conference actually talking to the press. Maybe she realizes that she's pretty bad at her job at this point. I'm surprised she's lasted a month considering how things go with Donald Trump's press secretaries usually. But yeah, it's no surprise that the people banning the AP from the White House also don't want to ask questions about such a weak point for Donald Trump. One, in fact, we've seen Republicans call him out for his praise of Putin, not just in Congress, on Fox as well. Yes, his Fox propaganda outlet is fed up with this position, and they should be. It is absurd. And that is exactly the point that Bernie Sanders was making in a clip I want to check out right here.
Thanks, everybody, for joining me to discuss a very, very serious issue. Yesterday, we witnessed an extremely sad moment in American history. We saw the President of the United States aligning himself with the dictator of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to undermine the independence of Ukraine and its democracy. Let's be clear. Trump is showing us that he sees one of the world's most brutal dictators as his friend and our longtime democratic allies in Europe as his enemies. He wants a world that is safe for authoritarians and oligarchs, but extremely dangerous for democracies. It will not surprise you when I tell you that Trump is lying, as he so often does. Yesterday, Trump said that Ukraine started the war. That's not true. Russia invaded Ukraine twice. First in 2014, and then again in 2022. Right now, Russia occupies about 20% of Ukraine. Since Putin's horrific invasion, over 1 million people have been killed or injured. Every single day, Russia continues to rain down hundreds of missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities. Putin's forces have massacred civilians and kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, bringing them back to Russian re-education camps. These atrocities led the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin in 2023 as a war criminal. Further, Trump called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator. That's not true either. Zelensky won 75% of the vote in free elections. In fact, his approval rating is higher than Trump's. In the midst of a brutal war, Ukraine's parliament continues to function and free and unfettered political debate takes place. Trump claimed that our European allies have done little to support Ukraine in its fight against Putin's invasion. He said the United States has contributed 3 times more than Europe. But that's another lie. In fact, Europe has provided more aid to Ukraine than the United States. But it's not just that Trump is lying again. That's not new. It's what this all reveals about where he wants to take our country, and in fact, the entire world. Trump is cozying up to Vladimir Putin. So who is Putin? And what kind of world does he want to build? Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end of the Cold War. Russia holds sham elections every 6 years where Putin wins 90% of the vote, and authorities don't even try to hide their ballot stuffing. There is no freedom of speech or free media in Putin's Russia. Protests are violently suppressed. Tens of thousands of people are in prison for protesting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Political dissidents are harassed or thrown into jail. The bravest, people like Alexei Navalny, are killed outright. Hundreds of thousands of Russians have fled Putin's brutal regime since his invasion of Ukraine. But Putin has maintained control in his country by offering Russia's oligarchs a simple deal. If you give me absolute power, I'll let you steal as much as you want from the Russian people. And that's why in a country where many are struggling economically, Russian oligarchs have stashed trillions of dollars in offshore tax accounts. That is the Russian leader that Trump admires. That is the Russian oligarchy that he supports. But that is not the perspective of the American people. We know, and we are proud of, the fact that the United States of America is the longest standing democracy in the world. We know that many hundreds of thousands of brave Americans over the years have fought and died to defend democracy. We also know that our allies in the world are those countries that believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. In this critical moment in our history, I hope that every American, regardless of political perspective, will stand tall and say yes to democracy, no to oligarchy, and no to authoritarianism. Thank you very much.
As I always say, never surprised, always disappointed. Always disappointed that this is our president. Always disappointed that this is the Republican Party. Always disgusted that there are so many willing to go along with him. But it is our job to call them out, and that is what we're going to be doing on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.